Hi, this is Cathy English, and I'm the curator of Revelstoke Museum and Archives. Normally around this time of year, we'd be running our children's program and having our last session, which we always called Butter and Biscuits. We've been doing that for the last 20 years. This year we didn't run our program, but I wanted to show how we normally do our butter. So when we have the program, we talked about how people made butter in the past, and most kids are able to tell me that butter is made from milk. So recently just saw a list of farms in the Mount Cartier district, which was mostly Ukrainian farmers south of here, and a list of like all the farms and what animals they had. Almost everybody had at least one cow. So people were doing small dairy production. There were a few larger dairy farms in Revelstoke. There was Hillcrest Dairy up where the Hillcrest Hotel is now, and there was Standard Dairy, the McKinnon family, below where Downing Street Sawmills is now. So they would have had bigger operations, they would have had big churns, but pretty much every farm in town would have had a little churn to handle the cream from their one or two cows. And so when they milked the cow, the cream would rise to the top. That was the heavier content of the milk. And it would separate the cream. Here's a little tiny cream jug. We have some big ones as well in the collection. And the cream would be put into a churn. So if you had just a small farm with one or two cows, you'd probably use a little glass churn like this one with a handle on it and the paddles inside. If you had a big farm, you'd have a big barrel churn, or there's quite a few different styles of churn. But the idea was to agitate the cream until it turned into butter. So one way of doing that was with a churn like this. It doesn't work all that well anymore, but when you turned the handle, the paddles would rotate inside the churn, and that would agitate the cream and eventually turn it into butter. So we're going to do that today, but we're going to use a jar. You can make butter easier if you use a mixer or even a blender, but we're going to do the jar method. After they would get their butter on a farm, you'd put it in a bowl and squeeze it with a paddle to get the buttermilk out. And of course, the buttermilk is great for biscuits or pancakes. And then farms, especially if they were selling their butter, they would use a butter print or butter press to form it into a nice 1 pound block. So what we're going to do today to make our butter, and we're not going to be shaking our jar for the whole 10 minutes that it takes. We're going to do like you would do in a cooking show and show you the different stages. So the first stage, the easy way, is to just pour whipping cream into a jar. I usually do about an inch or so, a couple of inches. And if you want salted butter, you could just add a little bit of salt. Close up your jar nice and tight. And start shaking. So it takes about 10 minutes or so of shaking to get your butter. And as I said, I'm not going to stand here shaking this for 10 minutes. The first stage that it would come to after you've shaken it a while is whipped cream. So this is perfect to put on your pie. It's just whipped cream consistency. So that's where whipping cream, that's what they sell it for primarily, is to make your own whipped cream. So this is the whipped cream stage. That happens after about 3 to 5 minutes of shaking. And after you continue shaking, you can hear the changes in the jar too as you shake. When it turns into whipping cream, you can hear your jar of what had been sloshing around with your cream. You can hear it getting very quiet. So that's when you know you're at the whipped cream stage. And it takes a little bit more shaking to get from the whipped cream to the butter. So here in this jar, we're almost at butter, and you can see how the butter is starting to separate from the cream. So just a few more shakes of this one, and you can hear the buttermilk sloshing around in the jar as it separates from the butter. And a couple of shakes more here. And open this up, and you can actually see the yellow butter inside the jar that's formed. And then at this point, you're going to take it to your sink and pour the buttermilk out into a jar, and you're going to want to save that so you can make your buttermilk pancakes or scones. And then you'll take the butter that's left in the jar and squeeze that. Sometimes I just squeeze it into a clean dishcloth and rinse it with water so you get the rest of the moisture out of it, and form it into a nice little ball, and there's your butter. It's that easy. So I made some baking powder biscuits last night, and we're going to be enjoying our butter on baking powder biscuits with a little bit of jam on top. So thanks for watching our butter and biscuits today.